الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين أما بعد فعن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم قال إذا جاء رمضان فتحت أبواب الجنة وغلقت أبواب النار وصفدت الشياطين أو كما قال النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام. Respected elders, brothers in Islam, it is the grace and favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the blessed and beautiful month of Ramadan is imminent and it is very close. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the ability to experience this month and to gain His forgiveness as a result. The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, as early as the month of Rajab, used to start praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, Ya Allah, please ensure that I experience the month of Ramadan. He used to supplicate and perform a dua, Allahumma barik lana fi Rajab wa Sha'ban. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give us barakah, give us blessing during the month of Rajab and Sha'ban, wa ballighna Ramadan, and give us life and reach us to the month of Ramadan. Because it is a month of forgiveness, it is a month of contemplation, it is the month when people win the freedom from the fire of hell. What I have done is read to you one of the most famous sayings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which indicate what happened during the month of Ramadan. Sayyiduna Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu reports from a hadith recorded by most of the great hadith scholars, including Imam Muslim in his Sahih, in which the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alaihi wasallam indicates that this is a month where you are required to fast for the sake of Allah. This is a month when you should be geared and when you should pay attention to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the month in which you give charity as much as possible. How is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala going to help you to perform these tasks? What is Allah going to do to ensure that this is made easier for you and I? What this hadith sharif does, it gives us 3 ways in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help us during this blessed month. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, إِذَا جَاءَ Ramadan, when the month of Ramadan appears, فُتِّحَتْ أَبْوَابُ الْجَنَّةِ, then the gates of paradise are all left open for you. None of them are closed. So the breeze and fragrance of Jannah is ever closer to you. Number 2, وَغُلِّقَتْ أَبْوَابُ النَّارِ, and the gates and the doors of the hellfire are firmly shut by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَصُفِّدَتِ الشَّيَاطِينَ, and perhaps most importantly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given a free rein to the shaitans, so that this world can be a test for you and I. So they have the influence to perform waswasa on you and I, to misguide you. However, during this blessed period of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that He has chained up each and every one of the shayateen. The 3 things that Allah has done to make Ramadan easier: He has opened the gates of paradise, He has closed the doors of the fire of hell, He has chained up and locked up all of the shaitans. What does this hadith actually mean? Is it merely a symbolic gesture? Is this just a statement to remind us of how important Ramadan is? Or is it actual? Is it fi'lan, meaning practically done by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is it just for you and I to be pumped up for this month? Or does this really happen? Let us focus on that and let us look what our behavior is like during the month of Ramadan, outside the month of Ramadan, and from that we will find out how much Taufeeq, how much guidance, and how much fadl Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really helps us and gives us a hand during the month of Ramadan. Number 1, outside the month of Ramadan, you can barely stop yourself eating after every 2 and 3 hours. Whether it's a small snack, whether it is a meal, that your digestive system is basically working 24 hours a day. You're just throwing in food, throwing in food, throwing in food. You can't stop yourself from eating. Every few hours you are drinking something, whether it's soft drink, whether it's caffeine or something. Yet, once the month of Ramadan entered, you are surviving 19 hours in the heat of summer without food and drinks? How is this possible now? Today we will go home and eat. In a week's time, we would have been 16, 17 hours into a fast. And we will continue to do that for a whole month. How on earth is this possible? Is it because suddenly we are given injections on the 1st of Ramadan medically that boost us up for this? Is it because suddenly we become a totally different person during the month of Ramadan physically? That we have an out-of-body experience that makes us into a second person? Absolutely not. You're the same person. You're the same individual. The only difference is now is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Taufeeq and His Rahmah is now descending upon you during the month of Ramadan. And that is why you can cope with 19 hours fast. And you think nothing of it. It is the breeze of Jannah. It is His fragrance that now is your nourishment. It is now quenching your fast. This is the power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives during the month of Ramadan. Number two, another point to reflect upon. Outside Ramadan, how easy is it for you and I to recite the Holy Quran? How much do we recite? If we go on Hajj and Umrah, then certainly we carry the Quran with us. On a Thursday night Khatam, inshallah, we do these things. We do these things and we recite the Holy Quran. If there is a Khatam, if there is a bereavement in the family, then we will pick up the Quran. Yet during the month of Ramadan, is there a spare moment not spent with the Quran in your hands? With absolute ease, whereas throughout the 11th month, you will barely manage to finish one Quran. In the month of Ramadan, people easily finish the recitation of the entire Quran. Sometimes they recite it 2 or 3 times. What is it? Is it suddenly that your eyesight is suddenly a bit more focused to recite the Quran during this month? Is it now that the Quran has been stapled to your hand and you have to and you are obliged to recite it now in the month of Ramadan? Absolutely not. It is a tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is because the gates of hell now are shut. That your hands now are not accustomed to other wrong things. They are now accustomed to holding the Quran of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is because of this, because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's tawfiq, that you are now reciting the Quran. Number 3, outside the month of Ramadan, except for those people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed, Salah is sometimes difficult, sometimes it is burdensome. For the rest of the year, for the 11 months of the year, what we do is we plan our life, we plan our work, we plan our leisure according to how we want to, and we fit in Salah here and there. What takes precedence is our leisure. What takes precedence is what time we have to be at work, what time we have to come home. That is our timetable, and everything is set and everything is actually put into place according to that. Salah almost is less important. If we get 5 or 10 minutes there, then we will quickly perform the wuzu and we will perform the sunnah and we perform the farz. As soon as possible, we will lift this burden from us. But now suddenly, during the month of Ramadan, is there any space in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the musallis? Whereas before, for 11 months, you are planning your life according to your own timetable. Now Salah, you base your life around the times of Salah. You are going to sleep at this time because you can't sleep at this time because it's Salah time. You are going to go to the shops at this time because you can't do it at this time because that's Zuhr time. Now suddenly Salah becomes the highlight, it becomes the serenity of your day. It is not a burden anymore. So much so that during the month of Ramadan, you will perform 580 extra rakats in the form of Salatul Tarawih. And it won't kill you, it won't be tiresome. It will be an hour after you have kept a 19-hour fast, and yet you still have the energy to do it and you will enjoy it. Why is this possible? Is it suddenly now that because physically you are stronger to perform the Salah? Certainly not. You're the same person. The difference is now is that the shaitans are locked up, the gates of hell are now firmly shut, and it is the breeze of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's paradise that is descending upon you. So you see, it is not really you that is changed during the month of Ramadan. Ramadan has changed you. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's tawfiq that has guided to you. If it was your own guidance, if it was because of your own effort, then without any hesitation whatsoever, after Isha tonight, you will perform 20 rakats. Who's going to do that tonight? If it was our own effort, then Salatul Asr, after it's performed, we will stay here until Salatul Maghrib reciting the Quran. In the month of Ramadan, everybody does that. Sometimes me and Hafsa, we read our manzil and we come to this mosque at 40 minutes before Asr. There were dozens of people here reciting the Holy Quran at that time during the month of Ramadan. So it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's tawfiq that causes us to be better in this. Last point. Outside the month of Ramadan, unfortunately, we are all guilty of it, me especially, that our tongues are not engaged in the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It becomes loose, it becomes futile, it becomes sometimes filthy and disgusting. We backbite one another, we swear, we tell-tale. We do everything which takes us away from the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What happens during the month of Ramadan now that our tongues are moist with the zikr of Allah and the salawat upon the best of all creations? Every time we think now, and every time we want to state our opinion, we wait a second and think, hang on, are we swearing? Are we backbiting? Are we saying something which in any way will negate the blessings of our fast? We haven't had a surgical procedure that just before the month of Ramadan we remove our tongue and replace it with a new one. It's the same tongue. The same tongue before Ramadan and during Ramadan, yet suddenly it is now moist with the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How on earth has this happened? It is because now the fragrance and the breeze of Jannah is upon you. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Taufeeq. It is because the shaitans are locked up and they can't pull that ill thoughts into your mind. And upon this I will conclude. It is very, very important that in Islam what we say is that evil comes from two sources. Either it comes from the shaitan or it comes from yourself. If you're doing something wrong, then you can blame two people. Your own ego, or you can blame the devil who's causing you to do that. You scapegoat for you. This is for 11 months of the year. During the month of Ramadan now, you only have one person you can blame if you are still doing ill, and that is yourself. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ clearly indicated that now the shaitans are locked up. How on earth are they causing waswasa in your heads now? It is you that is doing it. So if anything, the period of Ramadan is your own test of your character and behavior. Who am I really? If you find a revolution has happened during the month of Ramadan, that you are performing every sunnah, farz and nafal, that you are reciting the Quran at every moment, that the tasbih is in your hands at all times and not your mobile phone, and this means that the shaitan was causing you trouble for the first 11 months, you are now really a better person. But if you find you are still swearing and backbiting, if you find that your behavior hasn't changed and you are still coming last minute for Jummah and the first person to leave, if Salatul Tarawih is taking too long for you, then you can't blame the shaitan for he's locked up. It's really you that needs to change. Shaitan, his influence is muted during this month. It is time now for you to realize who you really are. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to fast during this month, be a better person, He has given us so much help. He has given us so much assistance. And it is up to us now to take full benefit of that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us a month of Ramadan, a month of piety, reflection and forgiveness. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala free us from the fire of hell during this blessed period. Ameen wa ma alayna illa al-balagul mubin. Inshallah ta'ala, the Darse Hadith program in this format will now commence after the month of Ramadan. But in its place, what will happen is after Asr prayer, during the first 25 nights of Ramadan, after Asr at 8 o'clock, there will be a very short Darse Quran based on what has been recited by the Hufaz the previous night in Salatul Tarawih. So this will continue throughout each and every day until the 25th night, when inshallah ta'ala in this mosque we will finish the recitation of the Quran. So please come to these dars, learn about the tafsir and the commentary of the Holy Quran. Jazakallah. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وسلم عليه. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا افتح بيننا وبين قومنا بالحق وأنت خير الفاتحين. اللهم بارك لنا في شعبان وبلغنا رمضان. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه ونور عرشه محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. آمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.